Do you guys remember when Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson came on their book? And they talked about in that book, they wrote about in that book and talked about in the show, how this guy, Anthony Bernal, was a total bully and really at the center of the cover-up of Joe Biden's mental infirmity. He was Jill Biden's chief enforcer, her jackal. It sounds like everybody in the Biden White House loathed this guy, per this book. He was not well liked, and he was drunk on his own power. That's my own take reading the book. So he got subpoenaed since he clearly was in on the whole Biden mental infirmity cover-up. He might have been one of the chief architects of it. And he just pled the fifth too. He showed up this morning to Comer's committee, and reading here off of the Representative James Comer post on X that was just put out, and just invoked the Fifth Amendment during his congressional deposition. This is a quote here from Comer. This week, new reporting confirms President Biden's aides took unauthorized executive actions during his presidency amid his cognitive decline. He's referring to the AutoPen article from the New York Times that we discussed yesterday. It's no surprise that Anthony Bernal is pleading the Fifth Amendment to shield himself from criminal liability. During his deposition today, Mr. Bernal pleaded the Fifth when asked if any unelected official or family members executed the duties of the president and if Joe Biden ever instructed him to lie about his health. This is a historic scandal, and Americans demand transparency and accountability. We will continue to pursue the truth on their behalf and examine options to get the answers we need. Wow. Joining me now to discuss it is National Review's Rich Lowry. Go ahead and subscribe, become an NR Plus member today. Rich, here we are again. First, the doctor. Now, one of the chief enforcers within the Biden administration, Jill Biden. Again, he's her jackal. That's what all the reporting suggests. Up there will not answer the question, incredible, of whether any unelected official or family members executed the duties of president and whether Joe Biden ever told him to lie about his health. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's pretty extraordinary. My assumption was that they just lie or dance around such questions. I never imagined they'd take the Fifth, but here we are. Usually not a great sign about your health if your doctor feels compelled to take the Fifth. And those two questions are incredibly telling, right? That he doesn't feel comfortable answering those. And on the AutoPen controversy, Biden does this interview with the New York Times. Kind of extraordinary that he didn't do an interview with the New York Times his entire presidency. Donald Trump, who hates the New York Times, is on the phone with Maggie Haberman, and New York Times journalist all the time. But in the course of that interview, it was damning, right? He didn't approve individually these people. He approved broad categories. So I think there's a legitimate question about whether those pardons are indeed legally valid.
Do you think there's any chance these things actually get overturned? All along I've been kind of looking at the Comer investigation as a political move and a worthwhile one, but not one that's likely going to lead anywhere. Mm-hmm. I'm starting to second guess myself.
Yeah, I wonder what the mechanism would be. Would a court feel empowered to just say no? Sorry, this doesn't apply. I guess it would start with the Trump administration challenging one of these pardons, right, and then getting litigation going. But we'd be in uncharted territory.
I don't think they have enough based on that New York Times article. Okay, so that article was damning, but I don't think that was enough to get a pardon reversed. However, I'm interested more in this Comer lane because they're running in tandem, and so you've got the admissions to the New York Times, coupled with. They're going to get Kevin O'Connor's testimony at some point. I think they're going to give this guy immunity. They don't want to put Kevin O'Connor behind bars. They want an answer to the question.
Right.
And his only other claim of privilege is Dr. Patient, which can be pierced by a subpoena. As a lawyer, I can speak to that. You know very well that you've got a lawyer-client privilege you have to uphold. But if you get subpoenaed to federal court, it's a different story. So this guy's going to be forced to talk. And my only question is whether, if you get O'Connor and possibly Bernal, if they give him immunity too, because, again, they're not interested in putting him behind bars. They want to get the story. Whether we could wind up with testimony from two of these top guys saying, yes, I was told to lie about his health. Yes, there were civilians. This is Bernal right here today, this second guy in the middle there. And there's Griff Jenkins trying to get him on record. If you've got those guys eventually on record saying that they were in charge of the presidency and they were told to lie, now we're talking about possibly undoing. Forget the pardons. We could go well beyond that.
Yeah. Well, but the ultimate play, though, right, is transparency and just knowing the truth about what was a conspiracy against the public interest. So that you just want to get it out. I don't think Democrats are ever going to fess up to what they did. What's his name? Andy Beshear, the governor of Kentucky, was on Meet the Press last weekend. He wasn't part of this conspiracy. He wasn't close to the White House. Asked, were Democrats too secretive about this and didn't acknowledge the truth soon enough? And he wouldn't say it, right? None of them will say it. So obviously you got some journalists who've dug in, Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson, and Comer's doing good work here.
Yeah. Here's Dr. O'Connor on July 9th refusing to answer. Watch.
Dr. O'Connor, were you ever told to lie about the president's health?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer based upon physician-patient privilege and in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I am not a lawyer. I must follow my lawyer's advice in this matter.
Let the record reflect that Dr. O'Connor has invoked the Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. Dr. O'Connor, please be very clear. Are you declining to answer the question put to you solely on the ground that you believe the answer will incriminate you?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer based upon the physician-patient privilege and in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I am not a lawyer, and I must rely on my lawyer's advice in this matter.
Dr. O'Connor, did you ever believe the president was unfit to execute his duties as president?
On the advice of counsel, I must respectfully decline to answer based on the physician-patient privilege and in reliance on my right under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution. I'm not a lawyer, and I must follow my lawyer's advice in this matter.
Wow. And you heard the same from Bernal this morning, who sounds like a very unlikable guy. This is pretty incredible. I mean, Joe Biden's been out of office now for almost 7 months, and they're still embroiled in scandal created by him.
Yeah, and that's just extraordinary to claim a fifth on that question. I had a very dim view of how they were handling Biden and thought they were lying all along. But I never would have considered a possibility that someone would have directly told his doctor to lie. And that at least opens up the possibility there. You would think, you do it all in body language and you're picking someone who's loyal, and who's going to be on the team and knows the score. So nothing explicit has to be said, kind of mafia rules. But that non-answer, that invocation of the fifth, raises a possibility that he was actually told affirmatively to cover it up.
That's exactly right. Because truly, the discussions that must have happened behind closed doors with both O'Connor and Bernal would have gone between the lawyer and the client. Did anybody tell you to lie about the right? And if the answer were no, God, no, nobody told me that. And no, there were no unauthorized civilians making presidential decisions, and I have nothing to hide, then you could easily walk in here. You could be combative. You could give it to Comer just as good as you were getting it.
Right.
They clearly do have something to hide. And I do not believe they're going to be able to keep it hidden indefinitely. Comer or somebody, Comer's enforcement mechanism is to go to the DOJ and have contempt charges brought against them, like we saw done to Steve Bannon. And if they don't comply, they could wind up behind bars, like we saw done to Steve Bannon. So I just don't think Kevin O'Connor is going to go sit in a jail cell. I think they're going to say, you will talk or you'll go to jail. On the other hand, we could offer you immunity, and then you could just give us straightforward answers. It's just a matter of time before we get to the bottom of this. Here is that a bit of our conversation with Tapper and Thompson on Anthony Bernal, who they did quite a bit of reporting on in that book. You write about this guy Bernal a lot, and you suggest, Jake, it was very tough to find anybody with a nice word to say about this guy who was Jill Biden's top person.
Yeah, and he acknowledged that he had a tough reputation. He was the chief of staff for Jill Biden and perhaps the most powerful first lady chief of staff in the history of this country. He is somebody that enforced what Jill Biden wanted. And at the end of the day, one of the things that was interesting when we wrote this book and researched this book was trying to figure out why was there no discussion of whether or not he should run for re-election? Why was it just a foregone conclusion that he was going to run for re-election, especially after he had made this kind of vague promise that he would be a one-term president? And it came down to two people. one of whom spoke for Biden, that's Mike Donnellan, and the other one spoke for First Lady Jill Biden, and that's Anthony Bernal. And basically they communicated to the rest of the staff. Bernal would say, you run for 2 terms, you serve for 2 terms, you don't do 1.
I mean, he was calling the shots inside that White House, and it really looks like it's possible Joe Biden found out that he was running for a second term after Anthony Bernal and Jill Biden decided he was going to.
Wouldn't that be amazing? Now, it's very unusual for a First Lady, Chief of Staff to have so much power, but it makes sense here because the First Lady was so influential, and she's at the center of this conspiracy. If Democrats are going to be upset with anyone, yeah, sure, they should be upset with Joe, but they should be upset more about Jill because she knew everything about his condition more than anyone else, and she could have pulled the plug and said, "No, honey," in 2023 when they were considering this. Yeah, sorry, that's not necessary yet. Pulled the plug politically and said, "We're not doing this. Sorry, we're not doing this, honey. You're not a flirt." But obviously, she was fully on board, trying to get him to serve a second term. Which the idea that he could have served to January 2029 is one of the most preposterous things the American public has ever been asked to believe, and they didn't believe it.
Since President Trump was sworn in, his administration has made enormous progress at a breakneck pace. But don't forget, while they're moving mountains for the good of the nation, you've got your own personal savings to worry about. And one of the best ways to look after your savings is through diversification, particularly with gold, like from Birch Gold Group. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 40%. OMG. Central banks continue to bolster demand for gold by buying in record quantities. Global instability and tension is high, and Birch Gold makes owning physical gold extremely easy. Easily convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, or buy some to store in your home safe. Just text MK to the number 989898 and Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on gold. There's no obligation, just useful information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, take control of your savings today. Text MK to the number 989898. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.